everybody. I'm Nina Soden, urban fantasy author of the Sector C series and the Blood Angel series. And my guest today is Georgina Cross, suspense author of The Stepdaughter, which just released. It is her debut novel, just released in September of 2020. And she's got book 2 in the series coming out early 2021. So this is the moment in the video where I'm going to ask you to please click the like button below, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video, and let's jump right in and get to know Georgina. So tell us, please, how did you get started as an author and just your process from when you started? What did that look like?
Okay, well, when I started has a lot to do with you. And a lot of people don't know this. Nina and I used to be neighbors just down the street from each other. And this was probably 4 or 5 years ago now when I started thinking about writing full-time or trying to at least write full-time, getting back into my fiction. But like so many authors, where do you start? What are the resources? Who can you talk to? And so a mutual neighbor of ours, Courtney Simmons, said, hey, you should get in touch with Nina. She's also a writer and you guys could talk. And so we sat down together. We had coffee. I bought your Sector C book and we talked for like a good hour or two. And I felt like I picked your brain and you were so kind and gave me as much information as you could. And that really got me going. You know, it's meeting another person, knowing that there's more than one of us trying to do this, that it can be done. So that was really the beginning of it all.
That's awesome. I love to know that I have just a little bit of part in that process for someone. I like to share as much knowledge because when I started, it was just kind of fly by the seat of my pants, figure it out as I go. And I made a whole lot of mistakes along the way. So if I can get rid of some of those mistakes before they're made for other people, I enjoy working with other people to help. So that's awesome. So you just released The Stepdaughter in September, but when I met with you 4 years ago, you were working on a different novel. Magnolia something.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. Good memory. Yeah. So it was Night Magnolia. I'd written it about a family story when I was a young child in my old neighborhood. And it was always something that I thought about needed to turn into a full book. And so I put this together, you know, scoured the web, trying to learn how do you get an agent? How do you cold email these agents? And through Writer's Digest, which, you know, if anybody's getting started, I always try to lead them toward Writer's Digest, at least for all the tutorials, the sessions you can pay for. They help you with editing, but they also would host these conferences. And so I went to one in Birmingham that was close enough to us here in Alabama. And then on a lark, I saw that there was one in Chicago. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to fly up there. And it's an expense that I'll just figure out later, and I'll meet these agents. And so they did what you call those pitch sessions. And I don't know if you've ever done one of those, but it's like speed dating, but between an author and agent. And so I purposely signed up for agents that were representing suspense and looking to buy more suspense. And so that's how I met my agent. We sat across the table from each other. We ended up talking more on a personal level than about the book I was pitching. And I found that to be really interesting because she and I just kind of connected. And less than 2 weeks later, she wrote me a offer letter. And so we began the process of editing. And what I love about my agent, her name is Rachel. She was a former editor with Harlequin. So she's one of those special agents that comes in with an editor's eye. So she'll literally go line by line, and she is doing story arcs. She's rearranging chapters. She's helping with character development. And then she's getting into the nitty gritty of grammar. And I learned so much of my writing and how to improve my writing just through all of her edits. And so Rachel and I have been together close to 4 years now. I consider her a very close friend. And so she has now moved on to a bigger agency, which is great. So an agency in New York. And with her help, we started trying to sell that first book, Night Magnolia. We sent it to 10 editors to start with, and all 10 came back and said no. And this is how much I've learned and how changed I've become. But those first 10 rejections gutted me. I mean, I thought, that's it. I have no chance of ever being published ever again. Yeah, I had a phone call.
Yeah.
And so sorry about that. And so I went ahead and I said, okay, well, I'm going to scrap this idea for now. And I'm currently working on another book. Cause that's something else they tell you when you go out and submission, don't just sit there and wait. It's like
always
one of the worst things
writing.
you can do.
Yes.
Right. For your nerves. It's just painful. And so they constantly tell you, keep working, keep improving. And so I was halfway through a book and I learned so much, I think, from editing the first one with Rachel. And I was reading much more and I was starting to understand like what the market was looking for. So I felt like the second book was much more of something I wanted to do. And so my agent was like, well, let's not give up. It's only 10 editors, like literally 10 people said no. There are hundreds of editors. I was like, nope, I'm already working on this other idea. I want to finish it. This other idea is what ended up becoming The Stepdaughter. So one day I'd like to go back and do Night Magnolia and finish it, or revise it and get it published. But, you know, since then it's kind of been a whirlwind because Bookouture ended up signing us for a 2-book deal. So that's the book that came out in September with Stepdaughter. The Missing Woman is my next book that comes out January 6th. And then early last year, I signed another book deal because, again, they tell you keep writing. Don't just, you know, stay stagnant. So I wrote another book tentatively called Nanny Needed. And that sold to Penguin Random House. So that one comes out in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. So give me the elevator pitch for The Stepdaughter.
Okay. So Stepdaughter, as everybody knows, there are probably 1,001 stories about missing children and missing people. And my thought was, how do I make it different? So when a child goes missing, let's throw in that something occurs at the exact same time. And the house next door burns to the ground. So essentially it's a missing child story, but while everyone should be looking toward the back of the house when this little girl goes missing, everybody's staring at the front of the neighbor's house that is on fire. And so it already right off the bat is a very intense scene because she's trying to find out what's happened to the girl. It also explores this relationship between a stepmother and a stepdaughter. I'm a stepmother, but I have 2 college-age stepsons, so a completely different and I want to say easier relationship. Yeah. And so I thought it would be more interesting to, you know, turn this missing child story a little bit more on its head with people questioning, and even the stepmother to an extent questioning, do I really love her enough? Yes, she's my child. Why would people think that I don't care enough? And then the guilt associated with, did she properly care for her? And so I thought that would make it a little bit more of a standout from some of the other missing child stories that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So The Missing Woman, is it a standalone part of the series or do they connect in some way?
They're all standalone. Yeah. I respect people like you, authors like you that write series. I don't know if I'll ever tackle that. To me, it takes so much. There's a lot of planning that goes into every book. And so to imagine the story arc and character arcs that occur over, you know, what you've done, where it's like a 2-book, 3-book, 4-book series. I don't know if that's something I'll ever do. With suspense, you can often do standalones unless it becomes a crime detective series. And there are plenty of those out there too that do great. But no, mine are all standalones. And so the second one is, so the first book is based in Huntsville where we live. And then the second one is also based in Huntsville and it's inspired by Hampton Cove. So
oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. I figured there would be enough drama out of Hampton Cove neighborhood to write a whole book. So you'll recognize it, Nina. When you read it, the Hampton Cove pool is in there, the waterfall entrance. I've rearranged a couple of the streets just to make it flow better for my purposes. But it'll be very familiar when you read this story.
So did you utilize your friends, your neighbors in the story? And if so, have they read it and recognized themselves? And how do they feel about that?
A couple of my neighbors have said, please tell me you did not put me in your books. And I'm like, I promised you I didn't. So here's what's fun. And I think a lot of authors do this, and maybe you're the same as me. I don't think we ever write a person cut and dry after another person, right? I think a lot of our personality and quirks of a character we pull a little bit from this experience, we pull a little bit, and that's what I've done. And so, you know, there have been experiences in my past life, my past jobs, where certainly some of these behavior patterns of my characters are inspired by these other people. Oh. I don't know enough for where they would recognize, unless they have something to feel guilty about. But no, I thought it would be fun to have a story set in Hampton Cove, a very exaggerated version of Hampton Cove. But it's essentially these two women who do not know each other, do not orbit in the same world. One is very, you know, society wife. One is working woman, single mom with her kids, opposite sides of the neighborhood. But they share a very mysterious look at the pool. And there's just something about this look that ties them together. And then within hours, one of the women goes missing. So that's how that story plays out, is what did the women know? Did they know that something bad was about to happen? And now that one of the women is missing, you know, what do they do to go about trying to find out what happens? So that's the second book.
Okay. Very cool. Very intriguing. And since it is set in Hampton Cove, I'm very interested in reading it just to see what I see. All right. What does your writing process look like? Now, I know that when we first met, you were working and you have since left your job, retired, and you are now a full-time writer, which is the dream. And I suppose when you have an agent and so many publishing deals, you can't work while you write. So tell me what your now full-time writing position looks like and what that process is for you, especially now that we all have kids at home doing school and the world is completely different.
Yeah. So I left after, you know, almost 20 years of working full time. I left, and the reason I was able to leave is at the time I was working 7 days a week anyway. I was writing on the weekends. I've been doing it for a few years. And I was getting to a point back in January, February, where I felt like I was burning out. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how I could keep this pace much longer. I wanted the writing to work out so badly that I thought, if I'm going to burn out, it cannot be burning out from writing. I refused. So my husband and I started talking about me taking on a part-time position. And then lo and behold, I was called by someone I'd met through my Chamber of Commerce job. And she's a local celebrity in her own right. And she's got this incredible backstory and all these experiences from her childhood. And she called and said, "Hey, I'm interested in you ghostwriting my book. Can I hire you?" And I was like, hello, this timing could not be any more perfect. And so she said, "I'll pay you like a part-time staff person." We put together a memorandum of agreement like that night, because I thought, I will not turn in my resignation without her signing. She signed it within 30 minutes. And that's all it took. I turned in my notice. And it was the week that all the schools closed for COVID.
Okay.
So the timing of it was uncanny, because where everybody else was shutting down and working from home, the Chamber was very much going into the office every day. A lot of the services that we provide, they were really needing us to be in the office. And I found it difficult in the beginning of, how am I going to do this with the kids are now at the house? And not to mention the two older ones had to leave college. They packed up their dorm rooms and were told to come home. So we had 4 kids at the house eating SpaghettiOs. And I thought, okay, this timing is amazing. And it helped too, I think, with the transition, because I think to go from a full-time job with a team and constant meetings and constant people in your office to all of a sudden, yes, working the dream and writing full-time, but without the noise, I thought I might feel sad, but I ended up not, because we were all literally in the same boat. Like, everybody was working from home for the most part, if they could. Yeah. And so that helped me. But yeah, to answer your question, I mean, I work early in the mornings. I'm not a morning person at all, but I do it because the 4 kids sleep.
Yeah.
And it's the best time I can get my work done. So every morning, and I even told myself, now that I work full time from home and write full time, I will only, I'll take Saturdays and Sundays off.
Okay.
No days off. The only days I take off for now is, if we have to travel somewhere, and that's literally because I can't get to a laptop. So I've discovered that I'm actually a workaholic. I always thought that was the case, but I know that to be true now.
Yeah. So you work early in the morning. Do you set your own hours then? Obviously you set hours in the morning. Do you find that you are looking for, when you sit down to write, are you trying to get to a word count goal? Or are you trying to finish a chapter? Or are you trying to finish a scene? What is your goal when you sit down and write?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I know a lot of authors, they're very word count oriented. I'll say that in the beginning of a project, I write till I get tired. I mean, honestly, if that's 10 o'clock, I'm done, because I'm like, I mentally, whatever I write is going to all get cut. So why even bother? If I'm just not feeling it, I'll finish it, say, 10:30. But there are many days I'm feeling it. And so I'll write till 11, 12, 1 o'clock until, I don't know, one of the kids has basketball practice, or maybe I need to eat lunch or something. And so now when I'm up on a deadline, particularly back in June, I needed to turn in my first version to the editor. That was a different experience for me, because before I was on a deadline, but not really. My agent was asking for it. Let's pitch it to these editors. But this was like a contractual timeline. We had all these gate checks I had to hit, and I hit every single one of them, some of them early. But in June, it became more of okay, I've got to get to this word count every single day in order to make deadline. But yeah, like, now, I just turned in the memoir that I wrote for this woman that we're co-writing, ghostwriting for her. I just turned it into her yesterday. Okay. So she's got some fun reading to do over the holidays. And then we're hoping to shop that book and sell it hopefully next year. And then I just signed another 2-book deal. So I turned in those synopses, and then we're pitching another book deal with Penguin Random House for follow-up. So I'm working on that. I was doing that this morning. So it's just, it's every day. It's fun though. I really like it.
So what for you is the most work of writing? I mean, when I sit down to write, that's my stress relief time. I enjoy it because I do work full time in other jobs. Writing for me is a creative outlet. It is not work. It is fun. But marketing my books, I mean, that's hard. As an author, I just want to be in front of the computer writing. So what for you is the work aspect of being a full-time writer?
So the bulk effort is that first draft, right? Like that's my favorite part though.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've never enjoyed the synopsis part. I want it over with, because I have the idea in my head. I don't feel the need to write it down and give it to an editor, but that's part of the contract, it's part of the process. Yeah. My fun is the actual just letting that first draft come out and seeing where the story goes, what the characters do. I love dialogue. Mm-hmm. So I really get it. So that's the bulk of the work. The part that I dread is that first editorial letter, and it'll be like 7-8 pages long. Yeah. And they're never bad, but it's overwhelming. And I've read so many posts, and I belong to quite a few writers groups. Those letters, when they come back from the editor, it can be everything from change this character's name to we're going to cut these chapters to we need you to write a completely new ending. Yeah. That is daunting, because it's all in, they tell you to read through that letter and step away. So what I do is I read through the letter, step away, come back, and then I start writing notes into it. Then we have a follow-up phone call and the edits begin. That probably is the second part of when you're asking about what is the work, because now it's not that freestyle writing that I love so much and is the basis of the book, the work. Now I think the really nitty gritty is getting into the edits. And so that part can sometimes be arduous. I've noticed though, the more I've been writing, like The Missing Woman hardly had any changes. That's great. So I feel like I'm finally figuring out, either my editor and I are more in we work together, and I'm learning so much. So The Missing Woman really didn't have much I had to change, except the ending she wanted amped up a little bit. So that was a lot less painful, to be quite honest. The Nanny book, because I wrote it so early on, and a completely different editor. She has a very different style. She likes stuff that's darker, which I love. And so the bigger publishers I've learned, they take longer and they do several editorial letters. And I think that's why it takes them so long to publish, and they really stretch out the process to get it as perfect as they think it can be. And so with that book, we just finished those line edits. So we're getting really close. but yeah, that's the marketing part I love. Like, I'm sad that you don't love the marketing part.
I don't love it. I don't, it just takes time away from the creative process for me.
Yeah.
So I prefer the creative process. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. The marketing to me, I think because that's what I did in former life. That was my job for so long.
Yeah.
So to me, it comes a little more second nature, and I divide my head. You know, I agree with you. I think to work full time, and then you've got your kids. So when you do have the time, you want to write, you're not wanting to market. I completely get that. Whereas for me, I've split my head. So mornings are writing time. If there is marketing, I'll do it later in the afternoon or early evening, because I know that's when people are checking social media more often anyway. And I don't schedule. I mean, I know I could schedule it, but to me, that's how I've divided it up. I don't know if that would help you or anybody else to look at it that way, but yeah, that's how I try to.
Yeah, no, I like that. So I always think of writing with kids at home is almost like, especially now that kids are, you know, homeschooling, it's almost like having a newborn again, because you're kind of pulled in every different direction. So how have you adapted through COVID to just make sure that you can devote that time to writing without getting those distractions like we have in this, you know, getting the calls constantly and dealing with that so that you stay within that writing space?
Yeah, it's been tough. I feel for all working parents who are also finding themselves to be teachers. You know, there's a reason why my brain never wanted to return to high school chemistry ever again. I never wanted to conjugate a sentence ever again. Yeah. And, you know, my sister, I feel sorry too for parents with younger kids who, you know, working on a computer is not as intuitive. My kids are a little bit older to where it's more of a hassle to make sure they're out of bed and they've got their laptop and they've logged into each class. Then the younger ones, like my sister's having to hover over his shoulder because he's not understanding where to click, where to submit, where to do this. So my struggle has been just making sure the kids are getting up and doing it, and then staying on top of them every hour that they're logging into the next class, they're being counted as present, they're turning in their work. Something that we've really struggled with the high school one is a lot of the assignments aren't due till Friday. And some of the teachers are saying they're not due till Sunday. Yeah. So guess where his brain goes? He doesn't finish it till Friday. Yep. Or sometimes Saturday.
Sunday. Yeah.
Oh, we'll be at dinner on Sunday night. And he's like, I have to go to my room and do my work that's due in an hour. So that part has been tough. But no, I mean, I think because I get up so early and I work before they're all getting awake. The two college boys are incredibly self-sufficient. So they stay in their rooms. They tackle their own work on their own. So it allows me to, I work in the mornings, they do their schoolwork in the mornings, afternoon is the troubleshooting, who has to study, you know, and then it's driving every kid to their practices and feeding everyone. And then I do some of the marketing. So it's kind of a nice split in half the way the day is.
Okay. So let's go back to the Stepdaughter. I want to know, one, what inspired the book? And then I also want to know, what did you have to take out of the book? Was there a specific scene or anything that you had to take out that really killed you, that you really loved, but you knew it just couldn't stay?
Great question. So what inspired the book, I just wanted to write about a child that went missing, and I knew it was going to be a girl. Her character, she's on swim team. And, you know, people are already talking about her competing in high school, competing at collegiate level. So she is actually inspired by a family friend whose daughter we've known has been swimming since age 5. Okay. So, and my kids swim team for a little while too. And actually I did an interview with a woman who followed 18 swimmers on their way to the Olympics for 2 years. So she told me, she goes, you got the swimming stuff down pat. And I was like, well, I had to make a couple of calls to make sure I was, but that, you know, I had her in my head, but initially, I mean, when you asked me what had to change of the story, initially the book was going to be very creepy. It was going to be a thriller. Not that this isn't suspenseful, but this one was, the original idea was midway through the book, you'd find out that the stepdaughter was actually just a really evil child. The first half of the book would be all these conversations that seemed mundane. But the second half of the book, you see these same circumstances and conversations, but now you're seeing the snide comments she's making when her dad isn't looking. Oh. Now you're seeing how she was bullying the stepmother when nobody was really paying attention. It's really interesting when people look the other way to not know what's kind of happening. And to peel that apart, I thought was fascinating. My agent was really worried because she liked the idea, but she thought it was a little too intense, but she let me go with it. The editor was like, we're going to peel this way back because we love the idea of that whole stepmother-stepdaughter dichotomy, and we think we can still do it well without turning the child into an evil monster. She was also 9 when I wrote the book. She was originally going to be 9 years old and probably too young. Looking back, she's probably too young to be thinking some of the ways she was and acting some of the ways she was. So I had to change that. She became 13. Okay. And that tripped me up because when you read, with any book, you make a change in chapter 2, there's a ripple effect. Oh, yeah. Right. And with suspense, there are all these breadcrumbs. So you really have to be careful that anything you change doesn't break something somewhere else. So that took a lot of work. And I think because I went through that process with the first book and so many changes, I knew going into the second book, like I said, Missing Woman really didn't need much to change because I was anticipating how my editor was going to respond. So yeah, it's been the names had to change. That was something else I wasn't expecting. They changed pretty much every character of mine, their names.
Wow.
It's fine, but in my head, I still find myself, I'll catch myself, I want to call them by the original. Yeah. Yeah. And so I have to be real careful of that. But yeah. So
that's interesting that they changed the names. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more just about you. Go away from the books that you've written. What is your favorite genre to read, and what are you currently reading?
So I love suspense because I write suspense, but I have to say I love women's fiction too. I just recently got into Kristen Hanna books. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you are familiar with her historical fiction. She writes books that are like this thick and they're massive. But I've really started enjoying her. I think she's a good break for me because I do love women's fiction. I miss it, but she's a great break for me when my head is just inundated with one suspense book after another. That's what we love to watch at home too. We love to watch a lot of thrillers and scary movies year round. Doesn't have to just be Halloween.
Oh, absolutely.
But yes. I just finished reading Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. Holy smokes.
Good.
It was fantastic and quite intense. Okay. So she's a very intense author, and she's with a big publisher. And I've started noticing this, bigger publishers, the more shock value, the better. So when I wrote The Nanny and then I revised it so we could pitch it to Penguin Random House, I threw in a couple of shock values that I was like, this is going to be, like Gillian Flynn, like how she just throws in this crazy twist. They've pulled some of them out. And I have an editor who likes that stuff. And she was like, I think because there's so much in here already, and there's this huge twist at the end, sometimes it's better to, peel back some of them and have a little less. So we did. We got rid of what I thought was going to be crazy gripping. But, who knows? Maybe it'll show up in a different book.
That's right.
I'll put it somewhere else.
Keep those ideas on the shelf for later.
Yeah.
Right. Do you prefer ebooks, paperback, or hardcover?
If I could afford them, hardback. I would buy all hardback. So I prefer paperback. I'll read ebook, especially late at night. If I can't sleep and I'm laying in bed, I'll read. But I prefer paperback and hardback. Oh my goodness. So the library, I'm like, where have I been? Why don't I check books out at the library? So I have a stack of hardbacks from the library, and just flipping those pages, those huge, beautiful pages, and seeing that font is so satisfying to me. So yeah, what about you? What do you prefer?
I prefer paperback. I have hardcover, and those are more for the books that, I'm huge Stephen King fan. So I have a first edition Stephen King of It. I mean, there are certain ones that I really want in hardcover, but I know I'll never open them. But paperback for what I read. I like the bending of the spine. I like a loved book, one that has been read 1,000 times. Yeah. So I'm a paperback girl.
Yeah.
Ebook, I have a library in my phone, but it's really just for if I'm standing in line somewhere and need something to do.
Yeah.
All right. My last question is, have you ever read a book just because of the cover? And if so, what was it?
Oh, that's a good question too. So I'm a self-confessed book cover lover. Yeah. There will be books that I'm like, that is the most gorgeous cover, and I have no idea what the book is about. It's like The Vanishing Half, Britt Bennett. All of her books are like just swirling colors, but there's something. So that's one I would give an example. I've read enough about it to know what it's about, but just when I saw the cover, plus her name pops up all the time. Yeah. So when with the Nanny book, Penguin Random House said, "Hey, do you have any ideas for the cover?" And I was like, "Do we do something figurative? Because my, Missing Woman, Stepdaughter is very figurative. Do we do something abstract? I really like the idea of it." And so I don't know. We'll see. They're still coming up with the idea, but I'm curious to see if they do something. I think they're leaning more toward not figurative, but maybe like a creepy dollhouse, something to do with the nanny and the child. But I thought, wouldn't it be neat to have the cover that's got just this really beautiful, intense design? My eye just gravitates toward those covers. I think they're really neat.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything that you want to share with the viewers about yourself that we haven't already covered, or any advice if we have any potential authors in the viewing crowd?
Advice for certain, I've now that I'm writing and publishing more. So in 2021, I'll have 3 books come out, potentially 4.
That's
which
awesome.
Is amazing. And then 2022, I think there'll be 2 or 3 more. So I'm just shocked and overwhelmed, and I love it. But I think the only reason I'm getting to do this is and this is the advice I give to any author or aspiring writer is, all it takes is truly just sitting your behind in a chair and doing the work.
Yep.
Every time anybody asks me, how do you do it? What are your tips? And I'm like, that's the number 1 tip. And you've read this, I'm sure too. The blank page does nothing. You can't do anything with a blank page, but you can do something with a half-written page. You can do something with a paragraph. It's a starting point. It's something to edit, something to move forward from. So my advice is, when I was working full-time at a job Monday through Friday, Saturdays and Sundays were sacrosanct. Yeah. If I was not driving a child to a basketball tournament, either a grandparent or their dad was taking them. Because to me, Saturdays and Sunday mornings were my writing time. If somebody wanted to get together for lunch, I was like, nope. If somebody wanted to come by, I was like, we're going to have to move it to 2:00. So to me, like, you have to treat your writing time as a really special, valuable placeholder in your calendar. We mark off an hour to go to the dentist. We mark off an hour to have that meeting call. Why aren't we doing that for our own writing careers? And so I tell people, if it's too daunting to do every Saturday and Sunday, pick an hour on Sunday night, 6 to 7. That is your writing time. Nobody can bother you. Or maybe it's Friday mornings before work. Just really put yourself in that chair and commit to that hour. And before you know it, that hour becomes 2 hours, it becomes 3 hours. And then it becomes, to what you want is where you can't not write. Yeah. That's what you want, is where you just can't not write every day. That's the most beautiful part.
And I think the great thing about it is, once you've set that and you do it, it becomes a habit to the point where it's no question at that point. You're just going to do it.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, that's what my husband said. What are we doing tomorrow for Thanksgiving? And I said, I'm working. And my birthday's Friday. What do you want to do? And I said, I'm working, because I'll wake up in the morning, and if they're sleeping, I might as well get a few hours in. And so I can't ever, we're going on out of town Saturday. I'm taking the laptop. Yeah, I'm a little addicted, but I think I am at that point of, I can't not write. And so
that's why you're successful, which I think is amazing.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yes. All right. So I like to end all of my interviews with the questionnaire from Inside the Actors Studio, James Lipton's famous questionnaire. So my advice is, there's no wrong answer. And don't explain your answers, just the first thing that pops into your head. And we go. There are 10 questions. So the first one is, what is your favorite word?
Oh my gosh. Antibacterial ointment.
Okay.
It's so fun to say.
Antibacterial ointment.
So it's 2 words. I cheated.
You did.
It is so fun to say. It makes me giggle every time. I'm kind of a weirdo.
That's awesome. All right. What is your least favorite word?
Moist.
I get that one a lot. What turns you on?
Oh my gosh. When I see passion in a person, like a go-getter, I love watching other go-getters. It makes me so excited to see them.
What turns you off?
Lazy people.
Yeah.
People who literally have the ability to do something and just don't. They kind of resign themselves to not. Yeah. It's very frustrating.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh, what a great question. Running water.
What sound or noise do you hate?
People grumbling.
Okay.
My kids whining.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite curse word?
The F word.
Okay. What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
I have always considered what it would be like to be a politician. I don't think I have the stomach for it this late in my life, but I'm fascinated by politics. I always have. Female politicians in particular. I think it's that go-getter part of it too that I'm just inspired by. I would love to experience a day in the life of them, but I think now at this point in my life, I don't know if I'd want it forever. It looks exhausting and stressful, but oh my goodness, if they have the ability to make changes, that is an incredible life to lead.
Yeah. What profession would you not want to try?
Janitorial at an elementary school in particular.
Okay. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Gosh. That's a tough one. My head, I mean, you asked what's the first thing that came to my head. I would want him to explain why we do have childhood illnesses. I'd want him to explain why the human body ends up developing cancer and other illnesses. I don't know if there's an answer. So if there's no answer, then for him just to say, here are all the people who have passed and look how happy they now are.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this interview with me. I am going to post Georgina's contact information, her social media links, all of that, and where you can buy her book down in the description below. So make sure, if you like suspense, or even if you don't, books make great gifts, pick up a copy and start reading and give her a review, because all authors love reviews. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.